This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Friday, March 17th, 2023. I'm Alex Brown. Ivy Tech Community College in Terre Haute is seeking more than $55 million in funding for a proposed building project. The college plans to replace the majority of its current structure with a new two-story building and renovate an existing building to house its nursing program, which Chancellor Leanne Crooks said will benefit students.
They have the abilities when they leave here to perform extremely well in the workplace, but we feel like we owe it to our students to provide them the lab space that they will also see out in the work environment.
The funding would come from Ivy Tech's allocation in the next two-year state budget, which is currently being crafted at the State House. Terre Haute-based Hallador Energy is reporting full fiscal year net income of $18.1 million compared to a $3.7 million loss the previous year. The company says it made significant capital investments in 2022 to allow for increased coal production to meet market demand. Elkhart-based fiber internet service provider Surf Internet will begin construction later this month on what will eventually be 250 miles of fiber service. The company is investing $3.6 million and says it will begin in an underserved area of Elkhart County, moving to LaPorte and Newton counties later this year. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Get ready, Southwest Indiana. We're headed your way. IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation invite you to the second annual Engage Southwest Indiana event presented by Indiana University and Old National Bank, Tuesday, April 11th at the Old National Events Plaza in Evansville. We'll be diving into regional and statewide initiatives with a focus on talent, education, and issues shaping our economy. It's all about advancing the future of Indiana. More at ibj.com/engage.
Suicides are climbing faster among young people than adults. University of Notre Dame psychologist Dr. Theodore Beauchesne is using a $4 million grant to reinvent suicide prevention efforts for teens. And the first tool he'll test is a high-tech earbud that sends an electrical current to the vagus nerve, which has shown success in treating depression and reducing suicide risk in adults.
They take a device that's like an old school Walkman home with them. They plug in the earbud. They can listen to music while they're receiving the treatment, 25 minutes a day, and we can analyze their heart rate variability data. What other studies show is that heart rate variability increases, and that's evidence that the vagus nerve is changing in its function.
Beauchesne said about 200 teens in the South Bend region will be the first adolescents in the country to try the technology. An Australian biotech company that has its U.S. headquarters in Fishers has received additional approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Telix Pharmaceuticals says its lead prostate cancer imaging product, Illuccix, is now authorized to select patients who may be eligible for the drug Pluvicto, the only FDA-approved treatment for prostate cancer patients that was also developed in Indiana. Illuccix was first approved by the FDA in December 2021, and Telix says it generated $50.5 million in revenue from sales of the imaging agent in the fourth quarter of 2022, a 43% increase from the third quarter. A brain doctor in Indianapolis says the healthcare system fails to diagnose about 90% of people in the U.S. who have mild cognitive impairment or dementia. He's leading a team that says it's built a tool with 80% accuracy in detecting patients with undiagnosed Alzheimer's disease.
IU School of Medicine Professor of Aging Research, Dr. Malaz Bustani, says current diagnostic methods for mild cognitive impairment and dementia are invasive and expensive and therefore not scalable. With scalability as a major goal, Bustani and IUPUI Associate Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Dr. Zina Ben Maled, have created an AI tool that combs through electronic health records to detect early Alzheimer's and related dementia. The tool uses an algorithm to crunch massive amounts of data, even doctors' notes left in the records. Bustani says the technology was recently licensed through IU's Innovation and Commercialization Office to startup DigiCare Realized.
So Indiana University, the commercialization process, it took a very, very quick piece. That means the red tapes that in our Indiana state, but also in an IU are much, much smaller than other place. So we did this kind of process very, very quickly.
The team says the tool was 80% accurate when tested in about 100 Indiana hospitals. Kylie Valletta, Inside Indiana Business Radio.
The proposed renovation of the Memorial Opera House in Valparaiso is further in doubt, with the Porter County Commissioner's plans to lease out the nearby former sheriff's residence. Lakeshore Public Radio's Michael Gallenberger reports.
The $7.5 million project would have connected the two buildings, making them both accessible to those with disabilities while freeing up space in the Opera House. But Commissioner Barb Regnitz has been exploring the possibility of renting out the sheriff's residence to a long-term tenant.
This is just a good way for us to help to maintain that building and to make improvements to that building without having to ask the taxpayers to subsidize that.
The commissioners took the first step Tuesday by voting to get two appraisals to determine the fair market value for the rent. Laura Blaney cast the lone opposing vote. She wants the plan to be presented to the county council first.
I just think it's wise to have buy-in when we have these plans on the table for the expansion that includes that building.
Leasing out space in the sheriff's residence does not require the council's approval unless the county expects to make at least $25,000 a year in rent. For Lakeshore News, I'm Michael Gallenberger.
Newfield's CEO Colette Pierce Burnett is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports and entertainment, and beyond. Available now from your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.